So I encountered this several times now that someone would have a business that they are very passionate about, an area that they are very well versed in, very proficient in, and they're trying to find clients for themselves. The problem is that this problem only occurs very infrequently for their clients. I call that the blue moon scenario. And hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Please let me know if there's any issues with the sound. I'm trying a new audio setup, so if there's any issues, do let me know. So, what is it, for example, what can you do when, for example, you are starting or trying to get clients in a business that is something akin to looking for a needle in not one but 10 haystacks? What if, for example, you are trying to win clients in overhauling somebody's innovation management system? How do they manage innovation? How do they improve their entire innovative process? That is something that a company that relies a lot on innovation would do probably, once every 10 years or so, if at all. Many companies do this only gradually. They don't do a dedicated effort on this. And that's why I was very grateful for Richard Russell, my friend and former client, to jump in on the conversation on this post. And I would actually like to bring in some of his comments that he made, because he was a perfect example of that. He was doing exactly that. He has a background both in Google and in Amazon, and he was trying out two different business models 2 years ago when we were working together, and two business, not necessarily models, but types. And one was where he was looking at working backwards, which is this system that Amazon has devised, which in a nutshell is all about when you are trying to implement something new, work backwards. Just position it and write a document and present in it what it now looks like. What does it look like for the client? And then work backwards to create all of the background in order to make this vision happen. It's a very powerful method, and it's what has, for example, driven something like Amazon Prime. They just decided, okay, what if we could deliver in 1 or 2 business days and then make it all happen in the background? And that was Richard's original plan. And I hope it's okay, Richard, if you're listening, that I'm quoting you on this. But it's such a great and perfect example of the blue moon scenario. Well, and there Richard is, he's trying to find product managers who would be in leaders of product management organizations, to try to get them to buy into this idea that he would help them implement the Amazon working backwards system. And what he wrote in one of our comments was very instructive. He says, I found that I contact people and the response rate was really low. The conversations were rare, and most that I had were without action. It was very, very hard to find anyone who felt the need to improve anything related to innovation urgently enough and had the budget and remits to do it. So I'd get quite a few nibbles, but mostly from tire kickers and people who wished their managers would fund my service. And once he changed, and that was his second option that he was looking at. But initially, when we started working together, we were focused on the working backwards. And it was also because, and that was definitely also partially my mistake, because I was thinking that is such a cool thing, that is such an innovative thing, and there's so few people in the marketplace doing this, that I was sort of very much intrigued. Although I always suggested to Richard we should always look at, okay, what is the market response and how are we being received by the market? So that is by far the most important thing. But still, I was very intrigued by this idea of working on this Amazon system of working backwards and implementing this in other companies. Well, as it turns out, it simply didn't work. And Richard reverted to his second model, which was OKRs, which is something that is much more frequent, something pioneered by Google, where Richard also worked, where he and I met. And OKRs is objectives and key results. It's a methodology that you can use to get employees to focus on the right things. It's a team management tool where you set objectives and then you track key results and see how you did in each of those areas. And that is then what Richard focused on and working on. And he had way more takers. And he writes, then I changed not to a waiting room topic, but to something that is more urgency at a fundamental level. I now help execs at growth companies scale with OKRs, goal setting. I have a higher connect rate, 30%, he mentions, and get a reasonable number of inbound conversation from this with very little outbound apart from the connects and content marketing. People actually want my service, and my network refers people to me often enough. So that is the issue with Blue Moon services, right? You simply have the challenge of not finding enough needles in the haystack. There are simply far too few people who are looking for the service that you are offering. And by the way, I do need to make a clear distinction here and the definition here. Blue Moon services are not something, it's like a super rare niche, like whatever, pool owners or let's say dyslexic people. It's not that it's a small niche that is clearly defined. No, it is actually that a specific problem is in a well-defined niche, let's say companies, technology companies, 500 to 1,000 employees, that would be a nicely defined niche. However, the problem occurs so infrequently that it's incredibly hard to find the right entry point into that company. So my suggestion for this is that, first of all, you can always, of course, consider doing what Richard did, that he effectively does a complete overhaul of his business, changes the target persona, because now he's selling into VPs of HR, into chief operating officers, anyone who is in charge, and of course, CEOs, as he mentioned, anyone who is in charge of people and making them as effective as possible. So that is now his focus area, and completely different from previously, because previously that was chief product officers, maybe chief technology officers. So that's a very different business that he has created. That is always an option, of course. If you feel like there's simply no way in, you've tried many different angles and you don't find a way in, then one option, of course, is to do what Richard did. Another option is what I call the now I forgot the acronym, what it is exactly. WRTs, waiting room topic. It is something that you can use to simply get your foot in the door, to get someone to buy into an ancillary service. So for example, one of my clients, he's working on wholesale digital transformation. And what is one of his special ingredients is that he's very strong on influence, on how can you manage to influence people that are at your level and above you, because there you of course don't have any direct oversight, any direct imperative. So you have to somehow influence them in the right way. And one of the ideas that we worked on is that we would see if he can be sort of like an influence guru, right? So if you can help people with influencing those who are around them, you could get your way into a specific company. And then once you then work with them for a while, you will have a good entry point with them. You will be already entrenched with them. And when they then have a project that they need your help on, some like a digital transformation project, then you, of course, are already the number one person to work with them to help implement that. So that is another option. First, of course, is the wholesale change of the business. And the other one is the waiting room topic, right? So those are the options that you have. Of course, you can try different angles for doing the same thing that you are doing. And especially if you are in a position that you can afford to go for quite a while without income, if you can build up your reputation in a specific space, for example, being the digital turnaround expert, right? You can take a company that is very old school, very old fashioned, and you simply are able to help them to get into the 21st century. And that is your specialty. And you have some background. You've worked, for example, at a company that was specialized in this, and now you're striking out on your own. If you don't have a client yet right from the start, you might as well take the route of building up your expertise, giving talks, holding panel discussions and so on, networking your way into that. That is, of course, methodology that is valid. However, it doesn't apply to everyone, because not everyone has, for example, 2 years worth of income as savings and can simply live off that for a while. So that is, of course, option number 3. that you can simply establish your expertise, maybe do even some teaching, some university side gigs, assistant professor kind of gigs. If you are a strong enough expert in this area, that is the other option. And then based off that, you getting clients, you will have networked enough in that domain that you will be able to get clients off the back of that. But generally, my advice, if you are looking to start a consulting business, go relatively vanilla. This is also something that Richard suggests in one of his comments. Let me see if I can find that. There was a really good comment there. If anyone's struggling to sell a unique product, I suggest that making the product less unique will help. Aim for an offering that is very close, very close to something already in the market with one or at most two key differentiators. When the product is too different, it likely means there's no market. So it's very hard to pick up customers because nobody is looking for that unique thing. And that is also a key point here. You may actually be looking at the market and seeing, well, there are these people who are doing exactly the thing that I want to be doing. That is true. But unless you have actually done the work, you've put in the effort to figure out how did they get there? How did they figure this out? They might have had a very strong academic background in this space before they got to do that. I know one of my professors from London Business School. He was an world-renowned expert in project management. That was what he was teaching, and he was constantly getting consulting gigs in this very space. Well, he's an internationally renowned expert on this in this topic, so of course he will get those inquiries where he charges whatever $2,000 a day just to be there and to advise them. So that's perfectly valid because of these strong backgrounds that he can provide. So that is today's message. If you have something that is where you're struggling to find clients because that thing that you solve is occurring only every couple of years, please stop. That is really difficult to get into a company. So please stop and see if you can apply one of those three solutions that I outlined. First of all, see if you can find some waiting room topic, anything that is ancillary but that people need much more frequently. So for example, if you help people with strategic pivots, you are probably pretty good at go-to-market, right? Because pivot people tend to be strategic and revenue and sales and marketing thinkers. So is there something that you can do, for example, sales training, marketing services, being a marketing agency? And via that, you will network your way into companies so that then you can actually do the pivot yourself and provide these types of services. Or if you are in another space, for example, let's say wholesale organizational overhaul, right? That is probably, you are quite an expert on HR topics. So maybe that means you should go into giving outsourced HR support. It's all about the relationships after all. So once you have built up those relationships and companies come to you with a big problem that they have, that they need help with, then you will be the first person that they will talk to. But it takes time to develop that. Blue moon problems are very difficult to get in when you are starting from relative zero. So that was solution number one, find a waiting room topic. Option two is what Richard did, that he basically changed his entire business, did something completely different, that for which there is a need. And option number three is simply that you look for something ancillary, right? And so those are the options. And if you are struggling with implementing that, then I strongly recommend that you really take a pause and see what are your core capabilities. What is something that is a much more simple offer that you can offer, something very, very easy for you to actually do, and find something that is truly less unique than what you have been offering so far. And if you do that, I'm very confident that you will find your place in the market. Cool. I hope that was useful. If there's any questions, I'll be waiting for them now. But until then, I see you tomorrow.